Hey there, yarn bestie. It's Jaya from Hobbii here. Welcome back to Skein and Tell, the podcast that unravels it all. Today's episode is a special one because we're diving deep into the frosty magic and blooming creativity of our newest crochet along, the Frost and Bloom Cowl. And who better to guide us through it than the brilliant creator behind it, Toni Lipsey of TL YarnCrafts. We're going to explore the heart of this cowl, the story behind the motifs, Toni's favorite design details, and her best kept secrets for a smooth and joyful 6 weeks crochet adventure. So grab your project kit, settle in with something warm to drink, and let's get inspired together. Hello, Toni.
Hello, my beautiful Jaya. How are you?
I am excited to talk to you today. I'm actually very, very excited because I feel like this particular podcast episode, I've been looking forward to it for a long time. And also because, and I know that this is just a little test that I've done today.
It's looking good, looking real good.
But I've actually decided to join this cowl, so it's gonna be fun. So let's talk about it. All right. So welcome, Toni. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me. And yeah, this episode is fun. It's about the new crochet along that's gonna be launched very soon, I think.
Yeah. Oh, so exciting. Yeah, I still obviously vividly remember every step of preparing for this, and it is so exciting to finally be able to talk about it. You guys keep everything so tight under wraps, so I haven't been able to say a word, which is really hard for me, Gia. I'm saying, but I'm really glad to finally be able to share, what I've been working on. This is a huge project.
Yeah, it is. It's actually super, super fun. And I mean, we've known for it also in the office for quite some time now. And we've been like... All right, so
excitement translates because I've been so excited to put this together as well.
Let's get to it. The Frost and Bloom cowl.
Yes.
It's knocking on our doors. And it's going to be a super fun 6-week cowl that Toni, you have made for us, the crafting community. Exciting. And together we're going to create a lap-sized blanket called, and this is so funny, I love this word, a Lapghan. Did you come up? I've never heard that concept before, like that term before. Did you come up with that?
I did not come up with it. I cannot take credit. It's a word that I saw kind of floating around when I was searching for small blanket design. Now, I personally love the word Afghan. I think it's got a lot of history and a lot of tradition. I think it definitely applies to certain types of blankets, whereas a Lapghan is like, this really gorgeous heirloom piece, but just smaller size, perfect for one person. So I didn't come up with it, but I thought it was appropriate for this project.
It's super cute. And you know what? It's very, very sweet too, because you've named this pattern the Aura Lapghan.
Yes.
And it has these 10 beautiful, unique hexagonal motifs, right? And it's so cute. And also wanted to add that Aura is the name of my grandmother. So it is sort of, it's kind of sweet. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, I love that little bit of tying together. Oh, that's so sweet. Now be honest, would your mom your grandma have used this Lapghan?
Yes.
This right up her alley?
Yes. I have, so my two grandmothers, one of them taught me how to knit, the other kind of like how to crochet. And Aura is the one who taught me how to crochet. So it's just like, it has so much meaning for me too. It's really, really sweet.
Oh, that's super sweet. I love that.
So nonetheless, I have decided to join this cowl mostly because I feel like now is time for me to get back on my crochet game. Nice. I've taken such a long break, getting used to this like mom routine and everything, that now I am ready to get back in business.
I love it.
So
we're glad to have you back.
Thank you. And it was just, I've seen the finished product, inside. And it just like, the story blew me away. I thought it was such a beautiful, for me, it was the nicest. There's just a storytelling around this Lapghan that I just really loved a lot. And it just caught my attention instantly. So I had to join it. I was like, I'm in. And I already did my little crochet gauge swatch test there, and I'm so excited about it.
I'm so excited to have you part of the crochet along. It's definitely a big undertaking, but it's the kind of project where, like, when you get to the end and see the fruits of all that labor, it makes it so worth it. So I'm really, really glad that you're going to be participating.
All right. So I have 10 questions prepared for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we can just go through them. So, like I said, the cowl is called Frost and Bloom Cowl, but the pattern is called the Aura Lapghan. So let's talk about that. Why is one called different than the other? And perhaps also tap into the design. Tell me how, the 10 motifs came to be. What did they embody? A little bit about that storytelling.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as far as the name Aura Lapghan, it really came after the whole project was done. And that's typically how I name my projects, because I feel like they communicate to me. They tell me their story once it's all finished. And when I looked at this finished blanket and all the really gorgeous colors, the fantastic yarn that we use with it, this kind of, it had this luminescence, it had this energy around it. And just Aura Lapghan sat in my brain for a couple of days. I had a few names kind of knocking around, and every day that I would look at it, I was like, it has an aura, it has an energy, it's got this pull, this energy of like, grab your blanket, get the comfy spot on the couch, grab your Kindle and get a few chapters in. It felt like that kind of blanket that I'd want to spend the season with, just relaxing and doing all my favorite things. And then as far as the name of the crochet along, Frost and Bloom, it's definitely a very winter themed project. So this crochet along, of course, is happening during the winter as well. And it's this idea of, using these colder months, kind of this frigid weather, this time that we spend inside in our cozy places, to make our creativity bloom, to put it into these projects that will last us through the season, and every winter to come, we can then reach back and be like, yep, that is something that I created in the dead of winter, when it really feels like, our creativity should dry up. Everything kind of hibernates and goes to sleep over the winter. But in a lot of ways, I feel like our creativity really has an opportunity to shine, because, we're home, we're moving a little slower, everything is a bit more still. So the Frost and Bloom crochet along is really this idea of embracing the wintertime, but also using it to let our creativity bloom into this really beautiful project. Yeah.
And so tapping also a little bit more into the motifs. Tell me about those.
Oh, for sure. So there's 10 different motifs inside of the project, and they increasingly get a bit more difficult as the weeks go on. So we start off very simple, really straightforward. And actually, one of the motifs in that first week of the crochet along is what we'll use for our gauge swatch. So it's really a chance to just kind of dip your toes into this kind of stitching if you've not done it before. I know hexagons are going to be new for some folks. Working with kind of a tighter gauge is going to be new. So there's a lot of techniques and stitches and things that we're going to learn over the weeks. And each motif kind of introduces some different techniques, whether that's, playing around with color, playing with texture, playing with, laciness and openness. So there's post stitches in there. There's lots of different exploration of crochet. So, if you're used to just doing the basic stitches, this is a really good chance to kind of stretch beyond, what you're kind of used to.
Now you're tapped into placement and techniques and all of that. How did you decide actually on the 10 motifs specifically, and how did you manage to actually make them flow?
Sure.
And also, is there a kind of like, what would I even call it? Something that you kept in mind at all times? I don't know whether that's a stitch definition or kind of like, is there a critical element that you've kept in mind at all times?
Really? Yeah. I mean, as a designer, there's lots of kind of like little things you have to keep in mind as you're designing. I've got limitations on how much yarn I can use. I have to make sure all the motifs line up, all the edges line up so you can actually seam them together. I had to think about color placement. A lot of that has to do with the flow. So like one of the small features of this blanket that really pulls it together is the last round of each motif is done in the same color. So even though there's, multiple colors used throughout the project, there's this one kind of unifying color that brings it all together. So those are the kind of things that I have to keep in mind. But then also I'm trying to come up with 10 unique motifs. So some of them have more rounds, some of them have less rounds, but every single one of them has to have the same number of stitches on the edge, which was a lot trickier than I expected it to be. There were a lot of iterations of several of the motifs, and some of them are kind of born out of other stitch patterns that I've done maybe in rows or rounds. So now turning it into this hexagon and placing increases and making sure they're the right size. It's a lot of trial and error, but it's really the joy of a designer once you get it right, once it actually works out and you're like, okay, I've now done all the hard work and all you have to do is enjoy the stitching. That's really my joy as a designer. So it really came down to like keeping in mind those critical pieces as far as like pulling colors together, making sure stitch counts are right. But ultimately, once the pattern falls into the maker's lap, I don't want them to even have to think about all that hard work. That's my responsibility. So, it was fun to pull the design together, and I hope folks enjoy it. I really do.
They will. I've seen it, and it blew my mind. I love it, love it, love it. I cannot wait to get started, to be honest. But yeah. Tell me also a little bit about, so I know that the TL YarnCrafts universe, it kind of focuses on, and this is your own words, approachable modern crochet with a touch of polish.
Yes.
Projects that feel doable, so you can actually do it. But that they also look amazing and that remind us why we fell in love with yarn in the first place.
Absolutely.
Where do you think the Aura Lapghan sits within this ethos? And what aspect of the maybe, finished design exemplifies this overall look?
Oh, that's a big question. With all of the designs that I do within TL YarnCrafts, I want folks to feel confident going into it. Like, yes, this is approachable for me. This is something that I can actually complete. And with this project, there's definitely a higher level of difficulty than I typically put into my projects. But it's not like, super difficult right out the gate, right? So we start off a little simpler and we ramp up that difficulty over time. So you're building that confidence and that knowledge and that skill base as you're working on the project. So the motifs that you make in week 4 or 5 are much more difficult than what you make in week 1, but it doesn't feel like it because we've now gone on this journey together of building our skills. So that's kind of what I try to do within TL YarnCrafts. Like, yes, I'm going to give you some of those basics, those really soothing stitches and those those quick wins right up front. But there will be challenging parts that, stretch you outside of your comfort zone. And, maybe you encounter a stitch that you haven't tried before, or you're playing around with a color change technique that's new to you. So when you walk away from the project, you're like, yes, that was actually really fun. And I feel confident about what I did. But now you can also tick off all these new things that you've learned. So I feel like the Aura Lapghan does that supremely. It's really a great representation of what I try to do as a designer, having that polish because, I'll toot my own horn here. It really is a beautiful blanket. It's one of the most gorgeous things I think I've ever made. I think the yarn has a lot to do with that, the gauge as well, and then also the colors. There's a lot that goes into pulling this design together. So, that part is covered. It's always going to be really pretty, but I think it's in the making and like watching all these motifs come together and then bringing it together in the assembly stage. Once you get this visual representation of all that work, even for myself, when I was finishing up the blanket, I was like, wow, like I can't believe what I've done over these last few weeks. And I'm hoping that feeling translates to the folks who make it as well, to just be really surprised with yourself, but also super proud of yourself for the time and energy that goes into a project like this.
But does it go up and down, or does it just kind of just increase in difficulty?
I would say, especially if you're, a little bit earlier in crochet, it's something that you don't have a ton of experience with. This will feel like, a bit of a learning curve, right? Because each week we're going to play around with different techniques and different types of stitches. If you're pretty comfortable with crochet already, this might teach you a few new things, but on the grand scheme of things, like the way we assemble things, the way we, build the motifs, that's going to feel very familiar. So it really depends on, what skill level you're coming with. But as long as you know the basics, I feel like everybody could be really successful in this project. You just have to be, willing and open to try some new things.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's an idea. The pattern will increase over these 6 weeks.
Yes.
Can you then give us maybe an overall advice on how to better prepare before the beginning of cow, or doesn't have to be a lot of advice, but it can be maybe the most important piece of preparation that you can,
Yeah, I have 2 pieces of advice that I would definitely give for folks to get prepared for this. One would be to practice and make sure you're very, very comfortable with your basic stitches, and not just how to make the stitches, but how to read the stitches. Because we're going to be working with post stitches. We're going to be working with very specific stitch placement to make sure these motifs come out properly. So if I tell you to do a front post double crochet and skip a stitch and there's a lot of instruction. I, as a pattern writer, try to be as clear as possible. And thankfully, there's also video tutorials with this. But if you're not comfortable reading your work, you're going to have a lot of challenges. So practice making your singles, your half doubles, and your double crochet stitches. Really read that fabric, know what they look like on the front side and the back side. Be able to count your stitches. It's going to be supremely important. So as long as you've got that down, you're probably good to go. And then my other piece of advice is to get comfortable using a tighter gauge. So one of the things that I think makes this blanket really special is that it's meant to last. It's not this big lacy piece. It's a pretty dense piece of still very flexible and comfortable fabric, but it's definitely worked on a smaller gauge. And that's going to help a lot with the durability of the blanket. It's going to keep it nice and warm, but we're also working with a yarn that has some breathability, so it's very comfortable. So get comfortable working with a tighter gauge. Maybe make a small amigurumi project, or work on a simple washcloth with a tighter gauge than you would normally use, because that's definitely something to get used to with this blanket. Even as we're making all these different stitches, we're making tall stitches and post stitches and doing color work, but all with this with a hook that is a little bit small for the yarn that we're working with. So if you're comfortable with that and being able to work with those smaller stitches, you're going to have a lot more success here, I think.
And speaking of stitches, gauge swatches, which color should we be making the gauge swatch in?
So for the gauge swatch, if you get the kit, I would recommend either of the brown shades, either the lighter brown or the deeper brown. So one of the things that I do with a lot of my designs, and this one included, is I don't want you to have a ton of leftover yarn. We all have plenty of scraps in our stash as it is, and I don't want to contribute to that if I don't have to. So one of the things that I incorporated in this is there are certain colors within the kit project that will be exhausted over the course of making your hexagons. And that was on purpose. That was by design, because I want you to use up as much of those yarns as possible. Now, there are a few colors that you have some extras of. So you have some neutral, light, and deep brown, and then you also have a cream color. So you're going to end up with a bit more of that light and deep brown, so you can use that for your swatch hexagon, and then you don't necessarily have to put that one into the blanket. There's plenty of yarn for you to be able to make the swatch and still do the blanket.
All right, cool. Noted. Because I was like, which one of the yarns? Because I did think that I was like, I'm sure that Toni super calculated everything to the last gram, and if which one is it? So that's why I made it in a different color. Luckily, I had some of that yarn laying around in a different color, so I was like, I'll just that's fine. That's fine enough. All
Gorgeous color, by the way. That is just so.
Is there any advice, any tip or trick? I'm still in Halloween mode. Months pass by, but I'm still Halloweening. Any tips or tricks for each specific part, like you can say something like, okay, so for part 1, I recommend this. For part 2, this. Because I would love to maybe have a list of things to keep in mind for each part. Maybe a secret that you haven't shared, or maybe something that people need to do, or if they really, really want to go the extra mile, you know?
Sure. So there's actually a couple things as we go through the parts. One overarching piece of advice, and I'm sure this is a given, but I'm going to say it out loud just to make sure it's on record. Please weave in your ends as you go.
I knew it.
You knew it was coming.
I knew
it. So I adore a motif project. I think it adds so much character to the things that we create, but I know that can be a sticking point for some folks because there are ends to weave in. I've been crocheting long enough that I have gotten past my aversion to weaving in ends. It is a means to an end of a beautiful project, and that is something you have to keep in mind with this. Yes, there are a lot of ends to weave in, but it's worth it for what we're creating here. So I would strongly recommend over the weeks that you're working on your project, weave in your ends as you go. Make all your motifs for that week, weave in those ends, so then it's just ready to go for assembly. It's something that I often offer as advice, but I'll be completely honest, I don't always take, and I always regret it. Every single time that I see in my ends, I regret it. So that is definitely something that I would recommend. Another recommendation is to really utilize the video tutorials. I spent a lot of time creating those and really breaking them down. And what I now see is that signature TL YarnCrafts style, right? Like as you're going, I'm trying to identify what are going to be your questions or stumbling blocks as you're making these pieces. So I go a little bit slower in those areas to make sure you can see exactly where my hook is going, exactly the count that I'm getting to. So those videos are really going to be your best friend, especially if you're not a really strong crocheter so far. And then I'm trying to think as we go, if there are certain things in certain sections to keep an eye out for.
Let's go one by one. Let's go with part 1.
Okay.
1. What should we tip and trick for part 1?
A tip and trick for part 1 is going to be, so my first tip for part 1, so we're going to be working with some striping, and my recommendation is to carry your yarn as you go. So we're not going to be lining the back of our project or anything, but we're working with such short striping sections that the floats that we create from striping our yarns are not going to be super obvious. So there's no need to cut your yarn at every color change. And that is recommended throughout the pattern. It lets you know in what pieces we need to carry yarns versus cutting yarns. So part 1, we'll be working with some solid motifs, so you'll have no problem there. We're working with just a solid color, but we're also working with some stripe motifs. So I definitely recommend carrying your yarns as you go.
Nice.
I'm going to pull up the pattern to make sure.
Yeah, you do you, boo.
I'll make sure I remember what's in each section. Okay, where did it go?
So exciting. I'm so excited for this. I really, really am. I cannot count the days until it's launched.
I know, it's really exciting. I think I've been so in it that sometimes you just get in that very technical mode, and now I can just kind of enjoy it. I know I have one part left. I still need to submit the rest of the videos, but otherwise it's done and it's glorious. Okay. Let's talk about part 2. So in part 2, we have 3 unique and incredibly gorgeous motifs that we're going to be making. So for one of them, we're going to be using a popcorn stitch. And if you're not familiar with that already, it involves putting multiple stitches into one stitch, kind of like a fan stitch, but instead of leaving them all open and kind of hanging out together, they actually end up closing up. So my recommendation there is when you're making your popcorn stitch, once you complete the slip stitch to close the stitches together, kind of pull your working yarn a little bit. And I tend to do that a lot when I'm making popcorns or puff stitches or any kind of grouped stitch. So kind of pull that working yarn once you make the slip stitch to group the stitches together, and it just makes them a little bit neater. So it closes up that popcorn and makes sure that it's not kind of sprawling out. So it ends up being this little mass of stitch. And with that motif, when you make that little popcorn, it ends up making the final motif look a bit like a flower. It's very pretty. And it's that one little adjustment in your technique that really kind of tightens up the look of each of the individual parts of that motif. So that's part two. Part two also includes one of my favorite motifs, and I'm not going to say what it is, but I'm very curious for those who are making it, if you can figure out which motif that is that I, like, my heart just sang.
That was actually one of my questions that I have prepared for you. Like, what is your favorite? So I would love for you to tell us. I would love for this to be like,
Do you want me to give the insight? This will be the one group of people that know which is my favorite motif.
Yes, but when the question comes, okay, so save this a little bit for later.
No problem. So that's part two. Let's take a look at part three. Mm-hmm. So part three includes, again, some more intricate stitches here. So we're getting into spike stitches. We're working with post stitches. We've got puff stitches. We've got this really nice cluster. And I guess I'll speak to that one a bit more. So I really love a cluster stitch because, I'm a big fan of like a granny's where you've got like 3 stitches in one and you've got that lovely little look to it. But turning something like a granny stitch into a cluster really just kind of takes it up a notch, makes it a little bit more unexpected. So there is a motif in part 3 that involves making a cluster out of treble crochets. So that's in US. So that it's these nice tall stitches and we pull these clusters together. And when you're working through the pattern, that's one of the pieces where you might read it at first and be like, what are you saying here? Like, what do you want me to do? But I challenge you to not overthink the written instructions and just try out what it says to do. And it will make sense. It will click. There's also obviously instruction in the video, but that's one where like there was no simpler way to write it. But you follow the exact instructions, how they're written. You're like, oh, I see what she was getting at. So that would be my recommendation in part 3. Do not overthink the written instructions. Just do exactly what it says. I promise you, I will not steer you wrong. I will not. So that's part 3. We kind of play around with a lot of different types of stitches and color changes there.
And part 2 and 3, from what I read from the brief, are the most time-consuming parts too, right?
Certainly, yes, because both parts 2 and 3 include 3 total motifs that you have to make 8 hexagons for each. So those ones are definitely going to take the most amount of time. It's the most amount of work that we have to do over the course of the project. I would say making those motifs even takes longer than seaming everything together. So definitely give yourself plenty of time. And part 3 is definitely one of the more challenging parts of the pattern. Excuse me. So you've got 3 total motifs and each one is introducing different types of techniques and different types of stitches. So yeah, that's definitely one that you want to give yourself plenty of time for sure.
Cute. Yes. Okay, part 4.
Part 4. So part 4, I give you a little bit of a break. I give you a little bit of a reprieve because there's only 2 motifs to do. But I would say in comparison of all of the motifs in the blanket, these are 2 of the most challenging ones. And that's why I left those kind of towards the end on what ends up being a lighter week. So one of the motifs is challenging because there are so many color changes and there are so many very small stitches. And the only way to achieve that final motif is to be very meticulous about where your stitches are placed. It's a bit like a dance. Your feet have to go a very particular way to give it that beautiful, effortless look. So it doesn't look challenging once it's done. But when you're working up the motif, if things are not in alignment, it'll be very, very obvious. And then the final motif uses a bit of color work. We're pulling in actually tapestry crochet, which might be new for some folks, especially on such a small scale. These motifs only end up being a little shy of about 5 inches a piece. So we're packing a lot of color and a lot of technique in a very small space. So with the tapestry crochet, after making a few motifs, it becomes very comfortable and natural. But the first 1 or 2 might be a bit of a challenge. So I'd say with that one, with part 4, particularly with the tapestry crochet motif, just give yourself a bit of time. Take your time there, get comfortable with carrying the yarns, and really follow those instructions step by step because it lets you know where to change colors, where to pull yarns up, and that kind of thing. So just very close attention to the details, to the instructions, and you should be good to go.
Cute.
Yeah. So part 5. Part 5 is an interesting section of the pattern because it kind of it encourages some creativity. So far in the project, I've been very explicit of like what colors to use, exactly the stitch patterns and what should be done in each section. Whereas part 5, you kind of get to choose your own adventure in a way. So in that section, we have to make some half hexagons, and that's what helps us make the circular shape of our final project. But you also have to make some filler motifs. So we've made a lot of motifs at this point, but we need a few more to get that final shape. And since we need just a few more, I've let the maker decide which motifs they want to do for that section. So, you've now made these 10 different motifs. Which ones are your favorites? Which ones do you like the most and want to see more represented in your blanket? You can then choose those and make those additional motifs. So that allows every single blanket to be unique. And I think it's a really cool opportunity for folks to share with each other, like, these are the 5 I picked, and I loved, the motif from week 2 the most. So I made a few more of those. So it really is a chance to kind of go off script. And I know that there are some makers out there, I've communicated with them myself, and they really struggle with like freedom in patterns. They like to have some direction. They want you to tell them exactly what to do. And I spend a lot of time doing that in this pattern, but I'm really encouraging folks to kind of think outside of the box, consider what you've enjoyed so far on this project, and infuse a bit more of that into it. So part 5 is definitely a really enjoyable piece. At least for me, I love the creativity of it. I love the uniqueness, and it's just a small opportunity to make your blanket different than the next person's.
Yeah.
So that's part 5. And then part 6, everybody's favorite part, is just bringing it all together, right? So it's a chance for us to assemble all of our hexagons. Well, first is the placement, which is another opportunity for folks to have some flexibility, have some creativity. In the tutorial videos, I give a few examples of like how you can place the hexagons in your blanket to kind of give you a different look. I share, obviously, the exact way that I did it, and there's plenty of photographs for you to see exactly how I placed my hexagons. But again, this is just a chance for you to make yours a little bit different. As long as you get them in the correct shape, the correct layout, there is a diagram for how to do that. You can put all of a certain motif together. You could all of a certain color together. You could do it in stripes. You could do it in, color blocks. The opportunities are endless. You could do it completely random if you want to. So that's another chance for you to kind of like flex your creativity a little bit there. But
Do you actually have any tips on the assemble part, for instance?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely a series of steps that I recommend for pulling things together with the assembly. So one of the things I was very diligent about was trying to come up with an assembly technique that was as painless as possible. I understand nobody really loves putting together motifs. It's not the fun part of the project, but there are ways to make it not so painful, and also to make that joining and that assembly part of the design. So one of the things that I did was we're using a crochet join versus like a sewn join. I personally am a big fan of whip stitching my projects together, but with so many seams to connect, that would take absolutely forever with this project. So I was like, I am not going to subject people to that. Instead, we're just going to do a crochet slip stitch to make all of our joins. And then in the pattern, I do break down the order of how we should seam these pieces together. Because there are like some longer joins and then there's some shorter joins. So we focus on the shorter joins first, and then we can do the longer joins. And if anything, doing those longer joins then feels more satisfying because it feels like you're zipping through the project a whole lot faster. So that's one piece of advice, is like just set aside a weekend or like a really long day to just really plow through the assembly. Don't let it take too long. I do not want this project to languish in the back of the closet with that sweater you didn't finish last year. I don't want that for you. So just go ahead and knock it out and get it done. So have a lot of fun with placement, really focus on the instructions when it comes to assembly. And then the very last step is we do put a border on the whole thing. One of the things that I really love to do in my design is I kind of consider borders like the frame that we put on our piece. We've done all of this work and now we have all these raw edges, and the border really brings the final piece together. It highlights that main color that we've used in every single motif. And even with all the different colors and all the stitches and all the techniques, that final step of like adding the border really puts that finish and that TL YarnCrafts polish on the final project.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you for the tips. I think that people who are going to hear those tips are going to be like,
yeah,
good.
It'll make sense once you start, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, since the Lapghan pretty much needs to balance warmth and durability and breathability, how did the choice of yarn, this cotton wool blend that you've chosen, specifically enhances the textural impact of these motifs compared to maybe just, doing a solid color blanket or non-blended yarn or what, you know what I mean? So how do you think choosing this yarn made this specific pattern
I think the yarn used in this project ends up being kind of the main character. It really is the star and what takes it from just an everyday regular motif blanket into something that is, heirloom quality, something that you're going to keep close for generations. So this yarn, the fiber was super important because, we're in the middle of winter time. I live in a place that gets quite cold quite fast. Like it was warm last week, okay? And now it's freezing. So I live somewhere where I like to be warm and cozy. So the wool was definitely necessary. But I recognize, if you're having like a marathon crochet session, your temperature might fluctuate a bit. So you don't want something that is overly warm or stifling. So that cotton is going to allow, your skin and your body to breathe, right? And you're not going to get over warm. Another amazing quality of this yarn is that it kind of has this, I don't know, they like this heathered or like this melange look to it. So that adds an extra level of like visual interest. So instead of just having flat colors, like a flat purple or a flat blue, you have something that now, I don't know, it almost feels like it's vibrating a little bit, or it's got like some movement to it. So as your eye travels across this blanket, it definitely feels like it's got some additional texture. So I feel like the yarn definitely plays a lot into all the elements that bring this blanket together. It just heightens everything. And then I think beyond that, it's just a real pleasure to work with. The yarn that we're using is not going to split. It's not going to unravel. So some of those frustrations that you might have with other yarns, you don't have with this one. It's really a pleasure to crochet with. So instead of worrying about, fixing the yarn, you really just get to enjoy the crocheting process. So the yarn definitely played a huge, huge factor. And as a designer, we fret over yarns because you really hope at the end of it that the yarn complements the design. And in this way, I would definitely say the yarn drove the design. That the yarn itself, I really wanted to show it off in a really beautiful way. And I think that came through in this final blanket.
I love it. I love that it has such a nice stitch definition despite being a little fuzzy. It's really, really beautiful choice. Beautiful choice.
Thank you.
I want to touch upon again the 5 motifs that we get to choose ourselves.
Yes.
Why did you decide to add this element into this design? Adding the element of personal choice. And what kind of ownership do you hope that this encourages, actually? Do you hope that people might tap into being more freestyle in their upcoming projects after this? Or do you hope, what are you hoping out of this specific choice?
Definitely. I mean, as a designer, it is very easy to, just give the direction, just to tell people exactly what to do every step of the way. But I I truly believe in like empowering makers. I feel like every single one of us has this creative and almost like designer spirit in us if given the opportunity and if given, you know, enough support to be able to make those decisions. So, you know, I put that section in here specifically for the person who gets a little bit nervous when they have to make their own decisions in projects. So, you know, it's definitely a moment of freedom for the maker, but I'm not telling them to like design their own hexagons or anything, right? I'm asking them to, you know, really think back over the last 4 weeks of this project. What have been your favorite parts? And how can you highlight that even more in your own blanket? So it's a forced opportunity for folks to like infuse some of their own personality into this project. I think with something like a crochet along that has a kit and has very specific instructions, it's easy to just go through the motions and like knock things out. But this is a chance for people to pause, to really consider all the work that they've done, to highlight the more joyous parts of this project, and to walk away from it feeling empowered to make their own decisions in their future projects. I absolutely hope that after making this, people are like, wow, I love this stitch or this technique, or I've never tried this before and I want to seek out more patterns that use, you know, this idea. So, I mean, I know when I walk away from a project I've really loved, all I want to do is start something else. It's energizing, you know, it's encouraging for me to be like, yeah, I did that. What else can I do? And I hope people use that section of the pattern to, I don't know, just kind of step out of their comfort zones a little bit and feel empowered to make however they want to. I know like I have a photo in the pattern that shows the exact motifs that I use for my extra 5. But I also say to folks, like, you can do mine. That's why I put the photo in there. So if you really, really don't want to make up your own rules, you don't have to. But it is strongly encouraged. And my hope is that people will then use that to start conversations with others who are in the crochet along to say like, well, I really liked this motif from week 2 and here's the reason and here's how mine turned out. I want it to spark some conversation around, you know, how we make decisions in our projects. So yeah, I definitely hope that folks take a lot away from it, but really just feeling more confident in their abilities as crocheters.
I love it. It's the first time I ever hear about a design or a pattern where the designer actually just tries to make it more interactive for the user and to add that element of, like you said, getting out of your comfort zone. If you're used to just kind of following 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps. But what I also like is what you also said, that you're hoping it will spark some thought behind, like some introspective of, you know, of what you've been creating so far. And also, hopefully, and I'm convinced this is going to happen, it's going to actually spark conversation between people, because people are going to be like, wow, I really love the choice of, you know, what you've done with your blanket. That's a great, you know, we can also inspire each other. So that's really, really cool. Like, kudos, Toni, that is such a nice little touch to add to this. Honestly, it's really cool. I love it.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Yeah, it was a fun idea. And it's something I went back and forth with, because, you know, when you design, the idea is to make this very specific set of instructions. But I'm like, you know what? I think people can handle this. I think folks will get a kick out of it. And I'm very curious to see how it works out once the cal starts. Yeah.
And touching upon the little secret. So the design process included actually 14 motifs from, you know, that's what you had at the beginning, right? And then you cut them down to 10. Famously, with your dog's help. I want to hear that little story. I want people to hear that story. Which of the final 10 motifs, you know, from the ones that made a cut, is your absolute favorite, or even better, your top 3?
My top. Why? That'll be way easier. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for that out. I appreciate it. Okay, so as far as how I narrowed down The motifs. So I say one of my most Gemini traits is that I am terrible at making decisions. I am awful at it. You ask me what I want for dinner, I have no idea. Don't even ask. I never know. So when I was experimenting with like how this blanket would come together, I was practicing with lots of different motifs and coming up with different patterns. So by the end of kind of my experimental phase, I had these 14 really lovely motifs that I had kind of narrowed it down from a lot more than that. So I had 14 and I just could not think of how to cut it down to 10, which is how many I needed for the numbers to work out. So I was like, okay, I've got this dog and he just lays around. It's time to put him to work. So I took all 14 of my motifs and I laid them out and I put a little treat on top of each. And my dog is very particular, so I picked his favorite treat. So I was like, I know that he won't have any issue eating any of these. So I put out like the first batch. I put out like 3 or 4 of them and I had him come in and he ate a few and he left one behind. So I was like, well, this one's out. It's out immediately. And then I put the next batch down and we did that again. And I mean, by the end of it, he was so happy. He's like, I don't know what all these treats are for, but thanks, Mom. So that was really how I narrowed it all down. I had these 14 absolutely beautiful motifs. And who's to say where those other 4 will pop up somewhere in my design library. But big thanks to Pepper for helping me to narrow it down because it was quite difficult. I wish I would have recorded it. It was just so cute. He was adorable. We might have to recreate that. And then as far as my favorites, it's a little tough to say. Now, just so I'm clear, because I know I'm still not 100% sure. Is this going to be like a mystery? Should I not say the names?
Ooh, it's not a mystery anymore.
It's not a mystery anymore. Okay, perfect. All right, good. So as far as my favorites, so my absolute, well, let's go from 3 to 1. So my number 3, I'm just looking at all the photos to remind myself. I think my number 3 will probably be the block square. So it's based off of the crochet block stitch, which uses almost like a row of what feels like granny clusters, followed by a row of like single crochets that go in between the clusters. So it's just enough color to kind of break up the stitch. And it's really fun to make. I love how this one came together. That was one of the trickiest ones to turn into a hexagon, honestly, because the counts have to line up. But I would say that's my number 3 favorite. I love the look of it. And all of these motifs I've considered like what they would look like on a bigger scale. Like if I made a big old hexagon blanket, and I feel like that one would be lovely because of all of the color. So my number 2 favorite actually comes from the same part, and it's actually the granny motif. I am a sucker for a granny square, granny stripe, a granny everything. I don't know. Well, I do know. I know why I'm in love with granny everything, because that's what I learned with. And I created like a really strong connection with that stitch pattern because when I learned, I built a really strong connection with my mom. She's the one who taught me how to crochet, and she started me with the granny. So like that just, it means a lot to me. And I could get really sappy about like how it built my confidence and, you know, made me feel like I had skills, and it was my introduction to crochet, and she couldn't have picked a better project for me. I loved every single part of doing that. So granny,
shout out to Mama Gwen.
Shout out to Mama Gwen, the originator of all of this. She's the best. So I would say the granny motif is my second favorite. And then my absolute favorite of the entire project is the African flower. So the African flower we actually end up doing in part 3. And that one is a riff off of obviously the African flower motif. I've seen that used in like everything from amigurumi to clothing to blankets to it's pretty indicative of the crochet technique. Not quite as popular as like a granny or something, but it's definitely a motif that you see and you're like, that is crochet. Like it's just so beautiful to me. And I feel like with this yarn especially, it really pops because you have these clusters of stitches that are broken up by these spike stitches, and spike stitches build color a couple rows down. So you get these sections where, like, if you don't natively crochet, you're like, how did she do that? But when you're actually making the motif, it is so much simpler than it looks. I think that's what I love so much about the African flower motif in general, is that it is so simple to do. It is all incredibly basic stitches, but by placing color and spike stitches in very strategic places, you build something that looks very complicated. So I really love that one. And that's probably the motif that, like, if I could make a whole blanket with one motif, it'd probably be that one. It's really, really stunning. And yeah, that one's at the top of my list.
Cute.
Yeah.
Now I'm more excited. I was looking at pictures while you were talking.
Yeah.
If I could, because I don't have the names of the motifs. So I was thinking like, oh, can I trace it? Do I know which one she's talking about? Lovely. Okay. Thank you for sharing all of that. And thank you for sharing with us your secret, Toni.
My pleasure. It is. I have been waiting months to tell you all of my secrets. So they're just coming out of me now.
All right. I mean, you definitely love the friendship and the camaraderie and the, that comes with a crochet along. For participants who are pretty much looking in ways to engage beyond just making the blanket, what is the best way to leverage the community during the cow?
There are several communities that exist around this project. I would definitely encourage folks to, join my Facebook group. They're always participating in the crochet alongs, very vocal and knowledgeable folks. So, like, if you get stuck on a particular part, or you're like, I'm making my 5 extra hexagons and how did these turn out? Like, I love that space. And it's really great when we do crochet alongs because the people who are participating are very vocal and very engaged. There's also, of course, going to be our Instagram community. So you can use the hashtag Frost and Bloom Cow to find other folks around the world who are working on the project. And I absolutely love checking Instagram for updates when I do crochet alongs because everybody's ends up looking a little bit different. Like, I strongly recommend that folks get the cow kit. We were very intentional with every single piece that went into that, from the yarn to the bag. The bag is so cute.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And the stitch markers.
The stitch markers, which, like, so when the stitch marker design idea came up, and, like, that's one piece I will not spoil. I don't want to tell anybody what they are, but they're so stinking cute. And I'd never seen a stitch marker that looked like this before. And to be completely transparent, we don't need a lot of stitch markers throughout this project, but it's just something you should have in your stash because they are adorable. So there's
I agree.
Stitch markers, tapestry needles, there's the gorgeous bag and the lovely yarn. And I really feel like that's a part of the whole experience. So if you like the items in the kit, I definitely encourage you to get that. But one of the real joys for me as a designer is seeing how people will kind of use their own creativity to sub in yarns, either things from their own stash, or maybe they'll pick another really gorgeous yarn from Hobbii. I definitely recognize that people might have, wool allergies and things. So if you want to go for, an acrylic cotton mix, or like an all cotton would be a lovely swap for this blanket. But yeah, you can definitely, join the group, join the cow on Instagram.
And also the this is a parenthesis, the Hobbii crochet along group also on Facebook. We're going to be posting updates and everything there. So
amazing. Yeah, there are several communities. So Instagram, the 2 Facebook groups. I also welcome anybody who wants to join the Yarn Hive, which is my private membership. We have like a special channel that we create for all of our crochet alongs. So that's really the place to post as often as you like about the updates on your project. So there's lots of different ways to get involved. And yeah, I hope you'll find some friends and you'll engage and you'll, have those introspective moments of like, wow, that's what this person did. How will that maybe inspire my project? Or how can I share, my creativity to inspire others? Making crochet itself is incredibly rewarding and I love it as a craft. but there is something that happens when you share it with others that makes it that much more special.
Yeah.
I think it makes our projects more personal because it now becomes a memory. You have that reminder of like, wow, this was a great experience because of all these other people I got to interact with. And every time you use your blanket, you can kind of, lean on that memory, just kind of warm you up.
And it's also part of the roots of crochet. People would do it together, and so it's definitely knocking on those roots, and yeah, like you said, making you feel like you're part of something. You're not just crocheting all alone on your couch.
Yeah, especially this time of year, December into January and February, those can feel like, very quiet and isolating months. So this is a great opportunity to kind of reach out and find that community to really, get you through it all.
Awesome. I'm like, honestly, genuinely, I'm super excited.
Too. Oh, I'm so excited to see yours, G. I know it's going to be absolutely beautiful.
But I do also want to ask, what is next for Toni? Because now you've launched Happy Place with us. You've launched Happy Place Simplicity. You've launched your crochet hooks.
Yes.
Your Tunisian hooks. Tunisian needles or hooks?
Hooks, yeah.
Hooks. Good.
Yeah.
The cow.
Yeah.
What is next?
What is next? Toni's going to take a nap. I'm going to get some rest. No, it has been an incredibly amazing season, and Hobbii has always been such a wonderful partner to work with. I think, my favorite part of working with Hobbii is the freedom that you give your designers and your partners to like really infuse their own energy and personality and design style in the partnerships that we do together. And what's next? You know what? Your guess is as good as mine. The sky's the limit. And I think if anything, we're trying to find something we haven't done together already for the next project. But yeah, I'm open to whatever the universe brings me. I can't say I know for sure what's next, but throughout my entire career with TL YarnCrafts, I've just kind of gone with the flow. So wherever the flow leads us, that will be what's next.
Thank you so much, Toni, for joining us again. And just for spending time with us. I think that every single time I get to talk to you or I get to just listen to your story and your babbling, I am just honestly refreshed and filled with positive energy. And I think you're a beautiful and a wonderful person. And I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to actually get to interact with you, and that all of us get to listen to your stories. So thank you so much for everything you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me do what I love. It's still crazy to me that this is my job. So, I will enjoy every moment, and it's really that much better to be able to have such great partners like Hobbii. Thank you.
Aww. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of Skein and Tell. Huge thanks to the wonderful Toni Lipsey for sharing her insights, her stories, and the behind-the-scenes wisdom about the Frost and Bloom cowl. We hope you are feeling excited and motivated, and maybe even a little impatient to dive into those gorgeous motifs. And remember, the magic of a cowl comes from all of us stitching together. So be sure to share your progress with #FrostandBloomCowl. Join the community conversations and let your creativity shine through every single stitch. Until next time, keep your yarn untangled, your tension steady, and your heart full of color and love. Okay, love you, bestie. Bye.